Hello and welcome to Explorers of Elsewhere's Meet the Crew series. We're going to release a series of videos which highlight and really kind of drill into the player characters for Campaign 2, Elysia Rising. Just to make sure that you know who these lovable scamps are as they skitter around the darkened streets of Elysia. To kickstart this series, I introduce a new face of the main campaign. JC, hello, welcome.
Hello.
We really chuffed to have you. You've been in Brindlewood Bay, run by Chris
Mm-hmm.
in the past, and you've also got like a lot of other stuff going on as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I host my own campaign and podcast, which is called Adventures in Capital, and it's all about the Industrial Revolution. It's a D&D show exploring the radical history and the working class culture of the 19th century, with a lot of folk music and queer representation, disabled representation, and there are astonishing 2 episodes currently available, with more to come this year.
We'll make sure to check down in the description for links to those two and other future ones as and when they release. Yes, really thrilled to have you sat in one of the Explorers of Elsewhere chairs. Your character, a Sanguivar spider. So there's a lot of interesting tidbits here. But please, if you may, run me through the ins and outs of Algernon.
Algernon Cadwallader. He is a former agent of the Elysian Intelligence Corps, or the Foreign Service, as he rather euphemistically refers to it. He is the only child of a military officer and a sort of minor aristocrat on the fringes of Elysia's great houses, the ones who would later go on to become traitors, essentially, joining the forces of the arcane gods, who are then expelled from the city.
Yeah. So House Antalir, specifically in Elysia, yeah.
And he was orphaned at the age of 13, shortly after being dropped off at Morton College for Boys, a very elite private school, where he went on to spend his formative years, becoming incredibly confident in that very English private schoolboy way.
Sure.
And then from university, he was recruited into the military, following the footsteps of his father, by the Intelligence Corps, who sent him abroad to conduct spycraft into nations associated with the arcane factions in the war, and also to track down and deal with these traitorous members of the Elysian nobility.
Sure.
And foreign travel sort of changed his perspective quite a lot, challenged a few truths that he'd picked up in his very insular and elite education, and he started experimenting with arcane magic himself. And in the sort of back alleys of some exotic bazaar, he encountered this arcane mineral, which he calls foresight, and it gives him what he believes to be premonitions of the future, incredibly weird hallucinations that he interprets. And one of these hallucinations he interpreted as a great calamity that would put his home city of Elysia in isolation in some sort of arcane spirit world.
Sure.
And so he returned to Elysia to inform the military and the government, and he was surreptitiously ignored by the higher-ups of the military for whatever reason, and he was set up during the eschaton when ghosts attacked and Elysia was transported to this spirit plane. He suffered like a near fatal injury, which it's taken him the best part of the last 2 years to recover from.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And as we join him at the beginning of the campaign, he is just about recovered. He's found a source of this foresight mineral within Elysia and has gathered this crew of ragtag criminals to exploit a niche for the supply and demand of arcane materials, including this one that he uses to get premonitions of the future.
Amazing. Okay, so create taking charge of your own supply lines. That's big brain plays right there.
Yeah, and these new premonitions that he's been given, they can swing either way towards like another great catastrophe or a vision of Elysia like back in its rightful place within the world. And he basically believes that he's the one who can make one of happen and avoid the other, by putting the right sort of dominoes in order and being the spider, being the mastermind. That's his whole motivation, is some kind of to manipulate the future.
Okay, so I guess he's these rumors that he'd be hearing of civil unrest and revolution, potentially these are the starts of the paths to one of these potential foresight outcomes. Interesting. Okay, so in regards to the character itself, what brought you to the finished product? Were there any kind of inspirations or influences or design cues that you've seen, or were there any particular kind of mechanical choices that you took one look at and thought absolutely have to do that?
Yeah, well, the seed of the character is something I've played before as a slide. This idea of like a government man who's been betrayed by his government or turned against his government.
Sure.
And I fancied playing a spider in the longer term campaign, and I've always fancied the idea of a blackmailer character. I really love the social game, learning what NPCs want, learning what NPCs are scared of, and using that to coerce them or catch them in a lie. I find that stuff really, really satisfying.
Yeah.
And I was watching a lot of like Sherlock Holmes media just to get like an ear for the dialogue and the accent of like a very posh person from the Victoriana era.
Yeah.
And then I realized Sherlock Holmes is basically the ultimate spider in fiction. He does not reveal what's happening to Watson at all until he's like 100% certain that it's correct and that he's basically already solved the case. And I thought that that kind of character really reacts well with the Blades in the Dark system, where you can go back in time and say, this is how I know that.
Yeah. That kind of retroactiveness of the flashbacks works really, really well for the mastermind.
So I've been sort of picking up little bits of characterization that I find interesting in Sherlock Holmes, and applying them to a more sort of nefarious blackmailer kind of character.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah, really, really keen to see in what is effectively like the exploitation of that kind of flashback system and the changing of the scene to sort of like your benefits. Amazing. So since the eschaton, since Elysia was wrenched from the world and tossed into the great void, in those past 2 years, what would you say has been Algernon's biggest brag or achievement?
The biggest brag, I'd say, probably shaking himself from this sort of malaise of an apocalypse that he predicted and happened anyway. And he's sort of got back in the saddle. He's put this team together. He's sort of starting to renovate his old family home as a lair for this new, almost found family.
Yes, because that is an important point. The hideout for the crew, we identified it as an abandoned manor, but it is in fact Cadwallader Manor, isn't it?
Yes, the one that he would have inherited at the age of 13, but never really used because he was in boarding school, university halls, and then he was off in the Foreign Service. So he's come back to it as a sort of wreckage. And all of his old neighbours have been sort of expelled from the city as traitors.
Yeah. In a district now with these glorious kind of mansion houses that have been torn down by the ravages of a very harsh 2 years, and now filled with squatters. So yeah, you've reclaimed your birthright. Amazing. Okay, well, I'm very, very excited to see what sort of plans Algernon puts together, and how you manipulate the events that are going to unfold as we go through the campaign. If you like the sound of Algernon, make sure to hit the like button and comment down below on your thoughts and any theories that you have for how Algernon's going to play out within the campaign. And if you want to see him in action, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications of when we release new videos. Campaign 2 is a very short time away, and it's going to be releasing very regularly, and I wouldn't want you to miss it. So yeah, make sure to keep up to date that way. Thank you, JC, for showcasing us your character. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.